The one galactic rule. Never face a human warship. They don't take prisoners. HFY, in the far reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy, where stars burned like distant campfires and planets floated in endless silence, there existed a species known as the Krillian. They were tall, with shimmering blue skin that reflected light like polished glass. Their eyes glowed faintly, giving them an otherworldly appearance. For centuries, they had thrived in their corner of the universe, avoiding contact with outsiders. But among their people, one warning was passed down from generation to generation, a warning about humanity. Zorak. The leader of the Krillians stood at the head of a circular table in his council chamber. Around him sat his advisors, all of whom shared his unease. The room was dimly lit, with soft purple lights casting long shadows on the walls. In the center of the table hovered a holographic map of nearby star systems, showing the borders of human-controlled space creeping ever closer to Krillian territory. Zorak leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "You have heard the stories," he began, his glowing eyes scanning the faces of those seated around him. "Humanity does not negotiate. They do not surrender. When they fight to win, and they leave nothing behind." One of the younger members of the council, Lyra, frowned slightly. She was still new to these meetings, her youthful curiosity often clashing with the cautious wisdom of her elders. Her voice was soft but steady when she spoke. "But are these stories true, or are they just myths meant to scare us?" Zorak turned his gaze toward her, his expression unreadable. "Myths do not destroy fleets, Lyra. Myths do not conquer entire star systems. These are facts, recorded by species who barely survived encounters with Earth's warships." He paused, letting his words sink in. "There is only one rule we must follow if we wish to survive. Never face a human warship. They don't take prisoners." Lyra nodded slowly, though doubt lingered in her mind. She wanted to believe that diplomacy could bridge any gap, even between such vastly different species, but the weight of Zorak's words pressed heavily on her thoughts. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that fear might be clouding their judgment. Meanwhile, many light years away, aboard the human warship USS Invincible, Captain Daniel Hayes was preparing for what should have been a routine patrol mission. The ship was massive, its sleek metallic hull gleaming under the artificial lights of the docking bay. Inside, the corridors buzzed with activity as crew members moved briskly to their stations. The hum of machinery and the occasional beep of consoles filled the air, creating a sense of purposeful energy. Daniel stood on the bridge, staring out at the vast expanse of space through the large viewport. His sharp features were softened by the faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. At 38, he was considered one of the youngest captains in the fleet, but his reputation for quick thinking and decisive action had earned him the respect of his peers. Behind him, Lieutenant Rachel Monroe, the ship's science officer, adjusted the settings on her console. "Captain," Rachel said, glancing over her shoulder, "all systems are green. We're ready to depart whenever you give the order." Daniel nodded without turning around. "Good work, Lieutenant. Let's get moving." He tapped a button on the armrest of his chair, activating the ship-wide intercom. "Attention, crew of the Invincible. This is Captain Hayes speaking. We're heading into uncharted space today, so stay sharp. Our mission is simple. Patrol the area, gather data, and report back anything unusual. Let's make humanity proud." As the engines roared to life and the ship pulled away from the station, Daniel allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. Humanity had come a long way since its early days of space exploration. Once confined to a single planet, Earth's influence now stretched across countless star systems. It wasn't always easy. There were conflicts, betrayals, and losses along the way. But humanity had proven time and again that it would stop at nothing to protect its own. That determination had earned them both allies and enemies throughout. The galaxy. Hours passed as the Invincible drifted silently through the void. The crew worked efficiently, monitoring sensors and running diagnostics. Everything seemed normal until Rachel noticed something strange on her screen. Frowning, she leaned closer to examine the readings more carefully. "Captain," she called out, her tone cautious, "I'm picking up an unusual energy signature about 3 clicks ahead. It's faint, but it's definitely there." Daniel turned his attention to her, his brow furrowing. "Can you identify it?" "Not yet," Rachel admitted. "It's unlike anything I've seen before. Could be interference from the nebula nearby, or," she hesitated, unsure how to finish her sentence. "Or, it could be something worth investigating," Daniel finished for her. He glanced at Commander Laura Simmons, his executive officer, who stood nearby. "What do you think, Commander?" Laura crossed her arms, considering the situation. "It's risky, sir. If it's hostile, we'll be stepping into unknown territory. But if we ignore it, and it turns out to be significant, we'll look negligent." Daniel nodded, weighing their options. Finally, he made his decision. "Set a course for the source of the signal. Let's see what we're dealing with." The Invincible changed direction, moving steadily toward the mysterious energy signature. As they approached, the nebula loomed larger in the viewport, its swirling clouds of gas and dust obscuring their view. Rachel continued to monitor the readings, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she tried to make sense of the data. And then, suddenly, it happened. A ship materialized out of nowhere, emerging from the nebula like a ghost. Its design was sleek and alien, with smooth curves and glowing panels that pulsed with an eerie light. The Krillian vessel hovered silently, its presence both mesmerizing and unsettling. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension on the bridge was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Then, the communications officer, Ensign Chris Harper, broke the silence. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission," he announced, his voice tinged with nervousness. "On screen," Daniel ordered, straightening in his chair. The image of a Krillian appeared on the main view screen. His features were stern, his glowing eyes fixed intently on the humans before him. When he spoke, his voice carried a strange, melodic quality, translated into English by the ship's universal translator. "This is General Vorton of the Krillian fleet," he declared. "You have entered restricted space. Leave immediately, or face the consequences." Daniel remained calm, though his instincts told him to tread carefully. "General Vorton, I am Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. We mean no harm. We detected an energy signature and came to investigate. Perhaps we can discuss this peacefully." Vorton's expression darkened. "Humans do not understand peace. You only seek conquest. Leave now, or we will destroy you." Before Daniel could respond, Lieutenant Rachel interjected. "Captain, I'm detecting a spike in their weapon systems. They're powering up." The bridge erupted into chaos as alarms blared and red lights flashed. Daniel barked orders, his voice cutting through the noise. "Raise shields. Helm, bring us about. Tactical, prepare for evasive maneuvers." The Krillian ship fired a warning shot, narrowly missing the Invincible. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through space, shaking the human vessel violently. The bridge crew members braced themselves against their consoles, struggling to maintain control. Despite the danger, Daniel refused to retaliate. "Hold your fire," he commanded, his voice firm. "We are not here to fight. Stand down." But the Krillians were not listening. Another blast rocked the Invincible, this time striking the outer hull. Sparks flew as circuits overloaded, and smoke began to fill the air. Laura rushed to Daniel's side, her face grim. "Captain, we can't keep taking hits like this. We need to defend ourselves." Daniel clenched his jaw, torn between his desire for peace and the need to protect his crew. Finally, he gave the order. "Fire a warning shot of our own. Target their weapons array, but do not cause critical damage." The Invincible responded with precision. its powerful cannons unleashing a single burst of energy that struck the Krillian ship. The impact disabled their weapons temporarily, forcing them to retreat further into the nebula. Silence fell once again as the immediate threat subsided. On the bridge, everyone took a moment to catch their breath. Daniel slumped back into his chair, rubbing his temples. He knew they had narrowly avoided disaster, but the encounter left him uneasy. What had started as a routine mission had quickly escalated into something far more dangerous. Rachel broke the silence, her voice hesitant. "Captain, what do we do now?" Daniel looked at her, then at the rest of his crew. Despite the chaos, they remained focused and determined, ready to follow his lead. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for whatever lay ahead. "We proceed with caution," he said finally, "but we don't back down. Humanity doesn't run from challenges, we face them head-on. And if the Krillians want to test us, they'll find out exactly why we're feared across the galaxy." With those words, the Invincibles set a new course, venturing deeper into the nebula. Whatever awaited them, one thing was certain: humanity's reputation preceded it, and the Krillians were about to learn firsthand why facing a human warship was a risk few dared to take. The tension aboard the USS Invincible was thick enough to choke on. After narrowly avoiding a full-scale battle with the Krillian ship, Captain Daniel Hayes sat in his chair on the bridge, staring at the swirling nebula outside the viewport. His mind raced as he replayed the events of the past hour. The Krillians had fired first warning shots, yes, but they had still fired. Humanity's reputation for being aggressive wasn't entirely unfounded, but Daniel prided himself on diplomacy, whenever possible. This time, however, diplomacy felt like an uphill battle. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe stood nearby, her fingers hovering over her console as she monitored the energy signatures within the nebula. "Captain," she said cautiously, breaking the silence, "the Krillian ship is still out there. It's cloaked again, but I can track its movements faintly. They're circling us." Daniel nodded, his jaw tight. "They're testing us," he muttered under his breath. Then, raising his voice slightly, he added, "Keep an eye on them, Lieutenant. If they make another move, I want to know about it immediately." Rachel nodded and returned to her work, her brow furrowed in concentration. Meanwhile, Commander Laura Simmons approached Daniel, her expression serious. "Sir, we can't keep playing cat and mouse like this. Sooner or later, they'll try something more aggressive. Do we have a plan?" Daniel exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "We stay calm and avoid escalating things further. But if they attack again, we respond decisively. Let's not give them a reason to think we're weak." Laura hesitated before speaking. "With respect, sir, maybe we should consider retreating. We're outnumbered here, and we don't know what kind of weapons they're hiding behind that cloak." Daniel shook his head firmly. "Retreating sends the wrong message. If we leave now, it confirms their belief that humans are unpredictable and dangerous. Besides, we came here to investigate that energy signature. Whatever it is, it could be important not just for us, but for the galaxy." Laura didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue further. Instead, she returned to her station, keeping a close eye on the crew's morale. Everyone was tense, their movements quick and deliberate, as they prepared for the worst. The hum of the ship's engines was the only constant sound, a reminder that they were far from home. Surrounded by uncertainty, back on the Krillian vessel, Lyra paced anxiously in the command center. She had been present during the initial confrontation with the humans, listening intently as General Vorton issued threats over the comms. Now, she watched as the senior officers debated their next move. Zorak, the leader of the Krillians, sat silently at the head of the table, his glowing eyes fixed on the holographic display of the human warship. "They're still here," one of the officers growled, pointing at the image. "Why haven't they left? Are they trying to provoke us?" Lyra stepped forward, her voice steady despite the unease. bubbling inside her. Maybe they're not looking for a fight. Their captain sounded sincere when he said they wanted to talk. Perhaps we should listen instead of assuming the worst. Vorton snorted derisively. Listen, to humans. You've heard the stories, Lyra. They don't negotiate, they dominate. Look at how many species have fallen to their so-called diplomacy. But those are just stories. Lyra countered, her tone firm. Stories meant to scare us into submission. What if they're different now? What if this is our chance to change things? Zorak raised a hand, silencing both of them. Enough, he said, his deep voice resonating through the room. We cannot afford to take risks with humanity. They are too dangerous. However, he paused, glancing at Lyra. Perhaps there is merit in hearing them out. If nothing else, it will buy us time to prepare. Lyra's eyes widened in surprise. You're willing to speak with them? Not directly, Zorak replied. But you, Liru, are young and idealistic. If anyone can determine whether these humans are truly different, it is you. Go to their ship, speak with their captain, find out what they want. Lyra swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle onto her shoulders. And if they refuse to cooperate, then we act accordingly, Zorak said grimly. But do not underestimate them, Lyra. Remember the rule, never face a human warship, unless absolutely necessary. With that, the meeting adjourned, and Lyra was escorted to a small ship. As the craft detached from the Krillian vessel and made its way toward the Invincible, her heart pounded in her chest. She had always believed in the power of communication, but facing humans, a species feared across the galaxy, was daunting, to say the least. On board the Invincible, alarms blared once again as sensors detected the incoming shuttle. Rachel turned to Daniel, her expression wary. Captain, we've got a bogey, approaching fast. It's small, probably a scout or transport. Daniel frowned, leaning forward in his chair. Hail them. Let's see who's brave enough to visit us after all that. The communications officer, Ensign Chris Harper, adjusted the frequency and opened a channel. A moment later, Lyra's face appeared on the view screen. Her blue skin shimmered faintly, and her glowing eyes locked onto Daniel's. Despite her nervousness, she spoke clearly. I am Lyra of the Krillian people, she began. I come in peace, seeking dialogue with your captain. Daniel studied her for a moment, searching for any sign of deception. Finding none, he nodded. This is Captain Daniel Hayes of the United Earth Fleet. State your purpose. My leaders wish to understand why you are here, Lyra explained. We mean no harm, but we must protect our borders. If we can resolve this peacefully, perhaps we can avoid further conflict. Daniel exchanged a glance with Laura, who gave him a subtle nod. Turning back to the screen, he replied, Very well, you may board. But know this, any hostile actions will be met with force. Lyra inclined her head slightly. Understood. Thank you, Captain. As the transmission ended, the crew sprang into action, preparing to receive their unexpected guest. Daniel instructed security teams to escort Lyra to the conference room, where they would hold their meeting. He also ordered Kyle Bennett, the chief engineer, to monitor the shuttlecraft closely in case it posed a threat. When Lyra finally stepped onto the Invincible, she was greeted by 2 armed guards who led her through the sleek, metallic corridors. The ship was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its design was functional, yet elegant, with glowing panels lining the walls and a faint hum emanating from the floors. She couldn't help but marvel at the ingenuity of human engineering. In the conference room, Daniel waited patiently, flanked by Laura and Rachel. When Lyra entered, she stopped briefly, taking in the sight of the 3 humans before her. Daniel gestured for her to sit, his expression neutral. Welcome aboard the Invincible, he said. Let's get straight to the point. Why are you here? Lyra took a seat, folding her hands neatly on the table. As I said earlier, my leaders seek answers. Your presence in this region has caused concern among my people. We fear that your intentions may not be peaceful. Daniel leaned back in his chair, choosing his words carefully. Our intentions are simple: exploration and protection. We detected unusual energy readings near this nebula and came to investigate. That's all. We're not here to claim territory or start wars. Lyra tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then why did you fire upon us? We fired because you attacked first, Daniel replied evenly. Self-defense is a basic principle of survival. Surely you understand that? Lyra hesitated, then nodded. I do, but misunderstandings often lead to unnecessary violence. My people have heard tales of your ruthlessness, Captain Hayes. Tales that paint you as conquerors, rather than explorers. Daniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. I won't deny that humanity has made mistakes in the past, but we've also learned from those mistakes. We strive to build bridges, not burn them. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air between them was heavy with unspoken questions and lingering doubts. Finally, Lyra broke the silence. If what you say is true, if you truly seek peace, then prove it. Show me that your words match your actions. Daniel considered her request, then nodded. Fair enough. Tell me what you need to see. Lyra smiled. Faintly, a gesture that seemed almost alien on her shimmering features. Take me to your bridge. Let me witness your operations firsthand. If I return to my people with evidence of your sincerity, perhaps we can find common ground. Daniel glanced at Laura, who gave him a slight shrug. Turning back to Lyra, he extended a hand. Agreed. Follow me. As they made their way to the bridge, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking a fine line. On one side lay the potential for peace, a future where humans and Krillians could coexist. On the other lay the possibility of betrayal, of violence erupting once again. For now, though, she chose to hope for herself, for her people, and for the fragile thread of trust that was beginning to form between two vastly different species. On the bridge, Daniel introduced Lyra to the key members of his crew, explaining their roles and responsibilities. Lyra listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that revealed her genuine interest in understanding humanity's ways. By the time they finished, even Laura found herself warming up to the young diplomat. The shuttlecraft carrying Lyra glided smoothly back toward the Krillian vessel, its engines humming softly as it disappeared into the nebulous swirling haze. On board the USS Invincible, the crew began to settle into a cautious routine, though tensions had eased slightly after Lyra's visit. No one dared to let their guard down completely. The Krillians were still out there, cloaked and watching, their intentions unclear. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, staring at the nebula through the viewport, his mind racing with possibilities. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe sat at her station, her fingers dancing across the console as she analyzed data from the ship's sensors. Suddenly, her brow furrowed, and she leaned closer to the screen. Captain, she said, her voice tinged with concern, I'm picking up unusual activity near the Krillian ship. It looks like they're moving weapon systems into position. Daniel turned sharply, his eyes narrowing. Are they targeting us? Not yet, Rachel replied quickly. But it seems like they're preparing for something. Maybe another attack. Commander Laura Simmons stepped forward, her expression grim. If they're gearing up for round 2, we need to be ready. We can't afford to get caught off guard again. Daniel nodded, his jaw tightening. Agreed. Tactical rays, shields, and arm all weapon systems. Helm, keep us mobile. Don't give them a clear shot. Communications, try hailing them again. Let's see if they're willing to talk before things escalate. Ensign Chris Harper adjusted the frequency and opened a channel, but the response was immediate and hostile. A burst of static filled the speakers, followed by General Vorton's cold, melodic voice. Humans, you have overstayed your welcome. Leave now, or face destruction. Daniel clenched his fists, but kept his tone calm. General Vorton, this is Captain Hayes. We are not here to fight. Your ambassador Lyra visited us earlier, and we had a productive conversation. Surely we can resolve this peacefully. There was a long pause before Vorton responded. When he did, his voice carried a dangerous edge. Lyra acted without authority. Her actions mean nothing. You will leave our space or suffer the consequences. Before Daniel could reply, alarms blared throughout the ship. Rachel shouted over the noise, "Captain, they're charging weapons. They're going to fire." "Helm, evasive maneuvers," Daniel barked, gripping the edge of his chair as the ship shuddered under the impact of a powerful blast. Sparks flew from nearby consoles, and smoke began to fill the air. "Return fire, but aim to disable, not destroy." The Invincible responded instantly, its cannons unleashing a precise volley that struck the Krillian ship's weapons array. For a moment, the enemy vessel faltered, its cloak flickering as systems overloaded. But it didn't retreat. Instead, it launched a swarm of smaller drones, each armed with energy weapons. "Drone squadron incoming," Rachel warned, her hands flying across her console. "They're surrounding us." Laura took charge of coordinating the defense. "Tactical, prioritize the drones. Take them out before they overwhelm us." The battle intensified as the Invincible maneuvered through the chaos, its crew working in perfect harmony despite the danger. Explosions lit up the void of space as human and Krillian forces clashed. Inside the ship, the crew fought to maintain control, their movements quick and deliberate. Engineers scrambled to repair damaged systems, while medics tended to those injured in the initial blasts. Amidst the chaos, Ensign Chris Harper hesitated at his station. His hands hovered over the controls, trembling slightly. He had always believed humanity's reputation for aggression was exaggerated, but now, seeing the raw power of the Invincible in action, he wasn't so sure. Doubt gnawed at him, whispering that perhaps the Krillians were right to fear humans. After all, hadn't they just proven how ruthless they could be? Chris glanced around the bridge, taking in the determined faces of his fellow crew members. They were fighting to protect themselves. Yes, but what if there was another way? What if humanity's strength wasn't the answer, but the problem? The thought lingered in his mind, growing stronger with each passing second. Meanwhile, aboard the Krillian vessel, Lyra watched the battle unfold with mounting dread. She had returned to her people hoping to prevent further violence, but her efforts seemed futile. General Vorton paced angrily in the command center, barking orders as his officers scrambled to regain the upper hand. "They're too strong," one officer exclaimed, his voice tinged with panic. "Their weapons are tearing through our defenses." Vorton growled, slamming a fist against the console. "Then reinforce them. We cannot allow these humans to win." Lyra stepped forward, her voice firm despite the turmoil around her. "General, please, listen. This isn't the way. Fighting will only lead to more destruction. Let me speak with their Captain Aguni. Believe I can still reach him." Vorton spun to face her, his glowing eyes blazing with fury. "You've done enough, Lyra. Your interference has weakened us. Stay out of this." "But I said, stay out of it," Vorton roared, cutting her off. Turning back to his officers, he added, "Prepare for a full assault. If we cannot disable their ship, we must destroy it." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. She knew Vorton's plan was reckless, born of fear and pride rather than reason. But arguing with him would do no good, not now. Instead, she slipped away quietly, heading for the communications room. If she couldn't stop the battle directly, maybe she could still make a difference indirectly. Back on the Invincible, the situation was growing dire. The Krillian drones had breached the ship's outer defenses, forcing the crew to engage in close combat. Laser fire streaked through the corridors as security teams fought to repel the invaders. Chief Engineer Kyle Bennett led a group of technicians in sealing off critical sections of the ship, preventing the drones from reaching vital systems. On the bridge, Daniel worked tirelessly to coordinate the counterattack. Sweat dripped from his forehead as he barked orders, his voice hoarse from shouting. Rachel, give me a status report. How many drones are left? Rachel scanned her console rapidly. At least a dozen, Captain, but reinforcements are incoming. Daniel cursed under his breath, his mind racing for a solution. Then, an idea struck him. Helm, bring us within range of their main ship. If we can disable it, the drones will lose coordination. But Sir Laura interjected. We'll be exposed to their weapons. I know, Daniel replied grimly. But it's our best shot. Do it. The Invincible surged forward, dodging blasts from the Krillian ship as it closed the distance. Just as they reached optimal range, Daniel gave the order. Fire everything we've got. Target their engines. The warship unleashed a devastating barrage, its cannons roaring as beams of energy tore through space. The Krillian vessel rocked violently under the assault, its cloak failing entirely as systems failed. One final shot struck true, crippling the ship's propulsion and leaving it adrift. For a moment, silence reigned. Both sides paused, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Then, a faint transmission came through, barely audible over the static. It was Lyra, her voice trembling with urgency. Captain Hayes, please listen. This battle serves no purpose. My people are frightened, but they do not wish to die. Allow me to negotiate a ceasefire, I beg you. Daniel hesitated, glancing at Laura and Rachel. Their expressions mirrored his own uncertainty. Finally, he nodded. Open a channel, he said. Let's hear what she has to say. When Lyra's face appeared on the view screen, she looked exhausted, but resolute. Captain, I have spoken with my leaders. They are willing to stand down if you agree to withdraw from our territory. Daniel studied her carefully, weighing the offer. And what guarantees do we have that this won't happen again? That you won't attack us the next time we cross paths? You have my word, Lyra replied earnestly, and the word of my people. We seek peace, not conflict. Please, Captain, let us end this before more lives are lost. After a long pause, Daniel nodded slowly. Very well. We'll withdraw, but know this, Lyra. Humanity doesn't back down easily. If your people betray this agreement, we won't hesitate to respond. Understood, Lyra said, relief washing over her features. Thank you, Captain Hayes. You've given us a chance to start anew. As the transmission ended, the crew of the USS Invincible began the process of disengaging. The Krillian drones retreated, their movements sluggish, as their command ship struggled to regain control. For the first time in hours, the tension aboard the human warship began to ease. In the aftermath of the battle, Daniel gathered his senior officers in the conference room to debrief. The mood was somber, the weight of what had happened hanging heavily in the air. Laura spoke first, her tone measured but firm. Sir, we handled that well, but it was too close. If the Krillians decide to test us again, we might not be so lucky. I agree, Daniel replied, rubbing his temples. But for now, we've bought ourselves some breathing room. Let's focus on repairing the ship and getting everyone back on their feet. Rachel chimed in, her voice softer than usual. What about Lyra? Do you think she's trustworthy? Daniel considered the question for a moment before answering. I think she genuinely wants peace. Whether her people feel the same way remains to be seen. But if there's even a small chance of avoiding future conflicts, it's worth pursuing. The USS Invincible drifted silently through the void, its engines humming softly as it moved away from Krillian space. The ship bore the scars of battle burn marks on its hull, damaged consoles in the corridors, and weary faces among the crew. Yet, despite the visible damage, a sense of cautious relief settled over the vessel. The ceasefire with the Krillians had held for now. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, staring at the swirling nebula fading into the distance. His mind replayed the events of the past day, searching for any sign they might have missed, any clue that the fragile peace could shatter at any moment. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe sat at her station, her fingers moving steadily across the console as she ran diagnostics on the ship's systems. She glanced up occasionally, watching Daniel pace back and forth. "Captain," she said finally, breaking the silence, "everything seems to be stabilizing. Repairs are underway, and the injured are being treated. We'll be ready to handle whatever comes next." Daniel stopped pacing and turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Good work, Lieutenant. But I want everyone to stay alert. Just because we've agreed to a ceasefire doesn't mean the Krillians won't try something else. They're unpredictable." Rachel nodded, her voice soft but firm. "Understood, sir. I'll keep monitoring their ship. If they make another move, we'll know about it." Nearby, Commander Laura Simmons leaned against the railing, her arms crossed as she observed the crew. She had been quiet since the battle ended, lost in thought. Finally, she approached Daniel, her tone serious. "Sir, there's something I need to discuss with you." Privately, Daniel raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Very well. Let's step into the conference room." The two officers left the bridge, leaving behind the steady hum of activity. In the quiet of the conference room, Laura closed the door and turned to face Daniel. Her expression was grim, her usual calm demeanor replaced by unease. "Sir, I don't think this is over. Something feels off." Daniel frowned, leaning against the table. "What do you mean?" Laura hesitated before speaking. "During the battle, I noticed some odd behavior from Ensign Harper. He seemed distracted, almost hesitant. And earlier, when we were preparing to fire on the Krillian ship, he delayed executing your orders. At first, I thought it was just nerves. But now, I'm not so sure." Daniel straightened, his eyes narrowing. "Are you suggesting insubordination?" "I'm not sure what I'm suggesting," Laura admitted. "But I think it's worth looking into. If Harper has doubts about our worse, if he's acting against us, it could put us all in danger." Daniel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "I'll speak with him, discreetly. For now, let's focus on getting the ship back to full strength. We can't afford distractions." Back on the Krillian vessel, Lyra stood in the command center, addressing Zorak and his council. Her voice was calm but firm as she recounted her conversations with Captain Hayes. "He's not like the humans in the stories," she explained. "He seeks peace, not conquest. If we give him a chance, we can build trust between our peoples." Zorak listened intently, his glowing eyes fixed on Lyra. When she finished, he leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "You believe this, truly?" "I do," Lyra replied without hesitation. "But time is critical. General Vorden and others will not wait long before pushing for retaliation. If we act quickly, we can prevent further bloodshed." Zorak nodded slowly, considering her words. After a long pause, he spoke. "Very well. You have my permission to continue negotiations with the humans. But tread carefully, Lyra. If they betray us, we will strike back with everything we have." Lyra bowed her head slightly. "Thank you, Leader Zorak. I won't fail you." As she left the command center, Lyra felt a flicker of hope, but also a pang of doubt. She knew the path ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges from both sides. Still, she clung to the belief that understanding could overcome fear. Meanwhile, aboard the USS Invincible, Ensign Chris Harper sat alone in the engineering bay, scrolling through the classified data he had downloaded earlier. His hands trembled slightly as he transferred the information onto a portable drive. He told himself it was for the greater good, that exposing humanity's vulnerabilities might force others to see them as less of a threat. But deep down, he knew it was a betrayal, one that could have devastating consequences. Chris glanced around nervously, ensuring no one was watching. Satisfied that he was alone, he slipped the drive into his pocket and returned to his duties, trying to appear normal, but guilt gnawed at him, making every movement feel heavier than it should. Later that evening, Daniel summoned Chris to the conference room. The young ensign entered hesitantly, his posture stiff as he stood before the captain. Daniel studied him for a moment, his gaze piercing. "Ensign Harper, Commander Simmons mentioned some concerns about your performance during the battle. Care to explain?" Chris swallowed hard, his heart pounding. "Sir, I was just overwhelmed. It was my first real combat situation. I didn't mean to hesitate." Daniel nodded slowly, though his expression remained skeptical. Understandable. Everyone reacts differently under pressure. But hesitation can cost lives, Ensign. I need to know I can count on you moving forward. "You can, sir," Chris replied quickly, forcing a smile. "I've learned from my mistakes. It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," Daniel said firmly. Dismissed. As Chris left the room, he felt a surge of relief, but it was short-lived. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on his conscience, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a dangerous line. He told himself it was necessary, that humanity's reputation needed to change, even if it meant taking drastic measures. But doubt lingered, whispering that he might be wrong. Hours later, as the ship drifted deeper into uncharted space, Chief Engineer Kyle Bennett worked tirelessly in the engine room, overseeing repairs. His sharp eyes caught something unusual. Faint energy signature emanating from one of the auxiliary consoles. Frowning, he approached the console and began running diagnostics. What he found sent a chill down his spine. "Captain," Kyle called out over the comms, his voice urgent. "We've got a problem. Someone's tampered with the ship's systems. There's unauthorized access to classified data." Daniel arrived moments later, his expression grave. "What exactly happened?" Kyle pointed to the console. "Someone accessed restricted files and copied them onto an external device. Whoever did this knew what they were doing. They covered their tracks pretty well, but not well enough." Daniel clenched his jaw, his mind racing. "Do we have any suspects?" Kyle hesitated before answering. "Based on the timestamps and access logs, it looks like Ensign Harper was the last person to use this terminal before the breach occurred." Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Bring him to the conference room now." When Chris was brought in, his face was pale, his hands trembling slightly. Daniel stood at the head of the table, his voice cold and commanding. "Ensign Harper, explain yourself." Chris opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Panic set in as he realized there was no way out. Finally, he stammered, I wanted to help. Humanity's reputation is killing us, Captain. Other species fear us because of our strength. If they knew we weren't invincible, maybe they'd stop seeing us as a threat." The room fell silent as the gravity of Chris's confession sank in. Laura stepped forward, her tone harsh. "So you decided to sabotage your own ship? To betray your crew? It wasn't supposed to hurt anyone," Chris protested, tears welling up in his eyes. "I just wanted to show them that we're not monsters." Daniel slammed his fist on the table, startling everyone. "You put this entire mission and everyone on this ship at risk. Do you have any idea what could happen if that data falls into enemy hands? They could destroy us." Chris hung his head, unable to meet anyone's gaze. "I'm sorry, I didn't think it would go this far." Daniel took a deep breath, struggling to rein in his anger. "You're confined to quarters until further notice. We'll decide your punishment later." Turning to Kyle, he added, "Get a team working on damage control. Find out exactly what information was taken and how we can mitigate the fallout." As Chris was escorted away, the mood aboard the Invincible grew darker. The crew, already exhausted from the battle, now faced a new threat, one that came from within their own ranks. Trust, once unshaken, had been fractured in the hours that followed. Kyle and his team worked tirelessly to trace the stolen data. They discovered that Chris had copied detailed schematics of the ship's defenses, along with sensitive information about Earth's fleet movements. The implications were, if the Krillians, or another hostile species obtained this data, humanity's position in the galaxy could be compromised. Daniel gathered his senior officers in the conference room. Once again, his expression grim. "We have a traitor among us," he began, his voice heavy with regret. "And thanks to his actions, we're more vulnerable than ever. We need to assume the worst, that the Krillians may already know what Harper gave them." Rachel looked up, her face pale. "Do you think they'll attack again?" "It's possible," Daniel admitted, "but we can't let fear dictate our actions. We'll proceed as planned, keeping a close eye on the Krillians. If they make a move, we respond decisively." As the meeting concluded, Daniel remained behind, staring out the window at the endless expanse of stars. The galaxy was vast and The USS Invincible drifted through the cold expanse of space, its crew working tirelessly to repair the damage from the recent battle and secure the ship against any further threats. Captain Daniel Hayes stood on the bridge, his sharp eyes scanning the monitors as reports poured in from every corner of the vessel. The discovery of Ensign Chris Harper's betrayal had shaken everyone aboard, but Daniel refused to let fear take hold. Instead, he focused on solutions, tightening security protocols, monitoring communications, and preparing for the worst. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe sat at her station, her fingers flying across the console as she analyzed data streams for signs of unusual activity. Her expression was tense, her usual calm demeanor replaced by a quiet determination. "Captain," she said suddenly, breaking the silence, "I'm picking up faint signals near the edge of sensor range. They're erratic, but they match the Krillian communication patterns." Daniel turned sharply, his brow furrowing. "Can you pinpoint their location?" Rachel hesitated, her fingers moving faster as she adjusted the sensors. "Not exactly, sir, but they're definitely out there and they're active." Commander Laura Simmons stepped forward, her arms crossed as she studied the readings over Rachel's shoulder. "If they've intercepted the stolen data, they'll know our weaknesses. We can't afford to be caught off guard again." Daniel nodded grimly. "Helm, adjust course slightly. Keep us mobile, but don't make it obvious we're tracking them. Tactical, prepare for evasive maneuvers. If they attack, we respond decisively, but only if provoked." The crew sprang into action, their movements precise and efficient, despite the tension in the air. The hum of the ship's engines grew louder as the Invincible shifted direction, its sleek metallic hull glinting faintly under the distant light of a nearby star. For now, the Krillians remained cloaked, their presence a ghostly whisper in the void of space. Meanwhile, aboard the Krillian vessel, General Vorton paced angrily in the command center, his glowing eyes blazing with fury. In his hand, he held a datapad containing the stolen information from the Invincible. The schematics of the human warship's defenses were laid bare before him, along with classified details about Earth's fleet movements. To Vorton, this was more than just intelligence, it was an opportunity. "Humanity thinks itself invincible," he growled, slamming the datapad onto the console. "But now we know their secrets. Now we strike where it hurts." Lyra, who had been standing quietly to the side, stepped forward cautiously. "General, please reconsider. Attacking them now will only lead to more bloodshed. We've already agreed to a ceasefire. Breaking it would destroy any chance of peace." Vorton spun to face her, his voice dripping with disdain. "Peace? With humans? You're naive, Lyra. They are predators, and predators cannot be trusted. This is our chance to eliminate them once and for all. But at what cost?" Lyra countered, her tone firm despite the danger of challenging the general. "If we attack, other species will see us as aggressors. Humanity has allies throughout the galaxy. Do you really want to risk starting a wider conflict?" Vorton sneered. "Let them come. We'll crush them too. The Krillians will rise as the dominant force in this sector of the galaxy, Before Lyra could argue further, Zorak entered the room, his towering frame commanding attention. His glowing eyes swept over the assembled officers, lingering briefly on Lyra before turning to Vorton. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. Vorton straightened, his expression hardening. "Leader Zorak, I propose launching an immediate assault on the human ship. Thanks to the information we received, we have the advantage. We can destroy them before they realize what's happening." Zorak's gaze shifted to Lyra, who met it steadily. "And what do you say, Lyra? Do you believe this is wise?" Lyra took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "I believe it is reckless. Attacking the humans now will undo everything we've worked for. It will confirm their worst fears about us, that we cannot be trusted. If we strike, we lose any chance of building trust, not just with humanity, but with others who might see us as a threat." Zorak considered her words for a long moment, then turned back to Vorton. "Prepare your forces, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We will observe the humans first. If they act aggressively, then we will respond. But until then, we hold our ground." Vorton clenched his fists, but nodded reluctantly. "As you wish, Leader Zorak." Turning to his officers, he added in a low growl, "Be ready. If the humans give us even the slightest reason, we strike without mercy." As the meeting adjourned, Lyra approached Zorak privately. "Thank you for listening," she said softly, "but I fear General Vorton will not wait long. He's eager for war." Zorak placed a hand on her shoulder, his glowing eyes softening slightly. "Then it falls to you, Lyra, to ensure that war does not come. Continue your efforts to build trust with the humans. Perhaps together, we can find another way." Back aboard the USS Invincible, Daniel gathered his senior officers in the conference room to discuss their next steps. The atmosphere was tense, the weight of their situation pressing heavily on everyone. Kyle Bennett, the chief engineer, stood at the head of the table, holding a tablet displaying the stolen data that Chris Harper had copied. "Here's the bad news," Kyle began, his voice grave. "The stolen files include detailed schematics of our shield generators, propulsion systems, and weapon arrays. Whoever has this information knows exactly how to disable us or, worse." Rachel leaned forward, her expression worried. "If the Krillians use this against us, we'll be sitting ducks. Even with enhanced security measures, we can't defend against everything." Laura chimed in, her tone resolute. "Then we adapt. We change our tactics, reconfigure our systems, and stay one step ahead of them. They may have our old plans, but they don't know how we operate under pressure." Daniel nodded, his jaw tightening. "Exactly. We play to our strengths: speed, precision, and teamwork. Kyle, I want you and your team to start modifying key systems immediately. Make sure nothing works the way they expect it to. Rachel, keep scanning for any sign of their movements. We need to know where they are at all times." "And Harper?" Laura asked, her voice sharp. "What do we do with him?" "For now, he stays confined to quarters under heavy guard," Daniel replied firmly. "Once we're out of immediate danger, we'll decide his fate. But right now, our priority is survival." As the meeting concluded, Daniel remained behind, staring out the window at the endless sea of stars. The galaxy was vast and unpredictable, and humanity's place within it was constantly being tested. He knew that maintaining trust both within the crew and with potential allies was critical. But with betrayal lurking in their midst, and enemies circling like vultures, the path forward seemed uncertain. Hours later, Daniel decided to take matters into his own hands. He ordered a shuttlecraft prepared and announced his intention to meet with Lyra aboard the Krillian vessel personally. When Laura protested, he cut her off with a raised hand. "We can't afford to wait for them to make the next move. If there's even a small chance of preventing another battle, I have to take it." Laura hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Just promise me you'll be careful, sir. If anything happens to you, I'll be fine, Daniel assured her, though his tone betrayed a hint of doubt. Besides, I won't be alone. Kyle's modifications should buy us enough time if things go south. With that, Daniel boarded the shuttlecraft and set a course for the Krillian vessel. As the small craft detached from the Invincible and glided silently toward the nebula, the crew watched anxiously from the bridge. Rachel monitored the shuttle's progress closely, her hands trembling slightly as she prayed for a peaceful outcome. When Daniel arrived, he was greeted by Lyra, who looked both relieved and apprehensive. She led him to a private chamber aboard the Krillian ship, where they sat facing each other across a low table. For a moment, neither spoke, the weight of their respective responsibilities hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. Lyra, I came here because I believe we still have a chance to avoid further violence, but I need your help. Someone aboard my ship betrayed us, and I fear the Krillians may already know our weaknesses. If you value peace, tell Ms. your people. Planning to attack? Lyra hesitated, torn between loyalty to her leaders and her belief in diplomacy. Finally, she sighed and nodded. General Vorden is pushing for war. He sees this as an opportunity to destroy you. But Leader Zorak has ordered restraint for now. However, I cannot guarantee how long that will last. Daniel leaned forward, his expression earnest. Then we need to act quickly. Together, we can expose Vorten's plans and prove that peace is possible. But I'll need your trust and your cooperation. Lyra met his gaze, her glowing eyes filled with resolve. You have my word, Captain Hayes. I'll do whatever it takes to stop this madness. As the two of them devised a plan, neither realized that their actions would soon ignite a chain reaction neither could have foreseen. Betrayal, hidden agendas, and conflicting ideals threatened to unravel everything they had worked so hard to achieve. Yet, amidst the chaos, a fragile thread of hope remained, a belief that understanding could overcome fear, and that trust, once broken, could somehow be rebuilt.